Hey, what is up, Facebook and YouTube? Thank you guys for joining today. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the Pod Express bass. So last week, we had a first look at Pod Express guitar. So this week, we're going to take a look at Pod Express bass. So if any of you are joining us today from that stream, thank you so much for joining today. And so pretty much, as you know, I'm typically, a guitar player, but today I'm going to be playing bass. So please forgive me on that. I'm using this beautiful Yamaha TRBX, which is more bass than I know what to do with. So other than that, let's get on into it. So we'll let questions roll in as they, we'll handle questions as they roll in. But pretty much what I'm going to do is just kind of walk us through Pod Express bass. Any questions you have, let us know, and myself or anyone else in the chat will, chime on in. But pretty much with Pod Express bass, it's the exact same functionality as Pod Express guitar. Everything's the same except the amps, the 7 amps, the 7 cabs, and the 17 effects, are all, really perfect for a bass player. There's some, there's some sharing between both, both models. For example, the overdrive in Pod Express bass is the same Minotaur that you'll find in Pod Express guitar. So let's get on into it. So we have 7 amps, 7 cabs, but before we start diving into that, let's take a look at the signal flow. So this is the Pod Express bass signal flow. Very similar to what we were looking at last week with Pod Express guitar, but there's a few things that are different here with Pod Express bass. Obviously the first effect, if you will, in both signal chains is a noise gate, and then following that we have the compressor, then the synth, then the distortion, and of course that is in front of the amp and cab, and then your volume, and then we have a modulation and a delay block at the end. But you'll notice on Pod Express bass that the mods and the delays share the same knob here. So we'll definitely dive into that as well. So taking a look, now that we know what the signal flow is, let's take a look at the amp models available here. So as you may or may not already know, all amps and effects that we have here in Pod Express bass were all derived from the Helix amp and effects processor. So if you're familiar with Helix or Pod Go, you should recognize these amp models everywhere from the Ampeg, B15 and the SVT, very classic bass amps here. And then of course we get into like the Tweed Blues, which is like a Bassman, Gallion Kruger, and and then going all the way down to anywhere from like a Mesa or an Aguilar. So what we can do here is I'll just kind of take us through the amp models, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn all effects off, because if you are curious, or let's say you're thinking about getting a Pod Express bass, right out of the box you have your 21 presets, and so the first 7 presets are actually the amp models. So I could press both foot switches and get preset 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And what's great about these presets is that each preset is so you can get an idea of what each of these amp models sound like. But at any time I could just go to the amp encoder and start auditioning amps, right? So let's take a look here. It looks like we're getting some questions in the chat. Let's see here. Slap a de bass, I love it. Delay and modulation cannot be used at the same time. Hello Jay, thank you for joining our stream today. Modulation and delay they cannot be used at the same time. Correct, they cannot be used at the same time. Just as you see here, I'm going through the chorus, then the flanger, then the phaser, and then as soon as I get out of the phaser, I'm now activating the delay. So correct, your question there was, can I use both at the same time? No, you can't, due to that knob sharing both effect categories. When available in Italy, Lorenzo, I'm not too sure off the top of my head, but these are shipping from since we announced them. So I imagine they should be in your region very soon, if not already. So I would definitely check with your local dealers, online retailers, whoever you favor. And, I would imagine they should be getting them very, very soon, if not already. And hello from Ukraine. How's it going, Constantine? Thank you for joining today. Hope all is well in your area. So, taking a look here, we have 7 amps, 7 cabs. 7 amps, 7 cabs. Let's take a listen to both of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, show these amp models through the presets, because I want you to know that, hey, if I were to buy this tomorrow, how am I going to get the sounds I'm hearing today on the stream? Well, guess what? This is fresh out of the box. These are the presets. Let's take a listen. Again, I'm no bass player, so bear with me. All right, so taking a look here, we have the first amp model, which is Round. And so Round is an Ampeg B15. So very classic sound, and knowing that B15, very classic sound where it's just kind of that really low end girthy type of sound. I love kind of cranking up the gain on a B15. It has a very, very just classic sound. You could do so much with this. And so you can kind of hear that grit that we're starting to get by cranking up the gain. And so for those of us who are maybe new to seeing how a Pod Express device works, I just showed how to raise the gain for this amp model. So once you select an amp model, you can adjust the amp parameters by pressing the Alt button and then turning the corresponding effect or amp selector knob. So when you see here listed in the silver text, we have gain, mid, bass, and then treble, and then the amp encoder is channel volume. So if you hold Alt and turn any of these encoders, you're going to be adjusting that corresponding amp parameter. So that's how I adjusted the gain here, and and so on and so forth. So now let's take a look at grit. So the grit, what we have here is the Ampeg SVT. And so very, very popular amp model. Let's hear what we got. If I want to kind of crank up the gain a bit there, maybe move the mids around, even the treble and the bass. Let's see, where's the bass at? Let's put it right around. That's probably too much. Let's do about half. Classic sound there. Let's move over to Vintage. Let's see what we have with Vintage, which is a Tweed Blues Bright, which is modeled after a Bassman. Let's see what we got going on in the chats before I get ahead of myself. Will the Expresses be available there in Ukraine? I imagine they should be, Constantine. So, for me, my focus in my region has always really been here in the States. So, that's definitely something I'll check in and see if I could get a response to you guys. I could put that in the chat later on. But like I said earlier, all Pod Express units have been shipping since they were announced. So I would really check to see your local retailers, because I would imagine if there's any retailers in your region that ordered them and wanted them, they should already have them, or they should be in transit. Let's see, Constantine, how to make a Muse sound here. Definitely, maybe we could dial that in. Between the distortions and the synths that we have here, I'm sure we can get close to that. So we just checked out, fairly most of the amps here. We just went over to Vintage, which is the Tweed Blues, which is a Bassman. So as you can see, these bass amps, kind of are really well rounded. Any kind of sound you're looking for. Here we are with the punch. you know, and when I say punch, that is really punchy. I don't know. Obviously, we're streaming. I don't know what your audio source is and how it sounds over the stream, but through my HS7s, it sounds really, really good. I think I'm going to have to learn the Seinfeld intro and use that setting. All right, next we have modern, which is the Obsidian 7000. Now that would probably be a good bass tone for some Muse stuff. Very on the high end, a little gritty. Next, the studio being the Agua Sledge. And then finally, the Cali bass being a Mesa Boogie, I believe. Sounds like we have a little bit of synth on that one. Let's turn it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, so now that we heard what all these bass amps sound like, I'm probably going to go to one that I like. Let's see what vintage sounds like. Actually, you know what? I think the punch sounds pretty good, and then we can kind of, build on top of that. So as we saw, we just listened to 7 different bass amps. Keep in mind that all 7 bass amps are perfectly matched to their cabinet. And so we have 7 cabs here, and as you can see, anywhere from a 115 to an 810, a 610. We have a very, robust group of bass cabs here. So keep in mind, although I can change the amp model, I could also change the cab model as well. So if I like, this Galleon or this G. Kruger amp here, I could press tap and alt at the same time. And then now I could choose a different cab model. And you'll notice that the LED ring segment goes from red to pink. And so if you want to change your cab, that's how easy it is to change that cab as well. And so we have 17 effects models, including a looper. So I'm just going to put this up on the screen here for those of us who are Helix users, a current or former Helix or Pod Go user. All these models right here will be fairly familiar to you because they are all pulled from Helix. Hold on, let me take a quick sip here. All right. So Constantine, great question there. Modern only has the Obsidian pedal, no amp. And so that's, here, I'll put that back up for you. So yes, that Obsidian 700, it's that kind of, that preamp slash, many have used it as a DI. So for the modern, what do we have for the cab there? We have a 410. So, it's one way of doing it. I know many bass players that just plug into the board, or they have, their little Sans amp or just a little DI. So, bass players, do things a little differently than guitar players tend to. And so, yeah, that's the amp model that, quote unquote amp model or DI kind of, amp source that we have here in Pod Express Bass. Great question. So let's see here. Whoops, sorry about that. Let's take a look. Can the amp and cab models mix and match? So yes, totally. So with that being said, if I, let's say, select this modern, or let's say I select this modern, which is the Obsidian 700 or the Studio, the Agua Sledge, it's automatically matched to the Studio here, that 110 epicenter. And so if I push the tap and the alt buttons at the same time, I can move the amp encoder, and I'm now selecting one of the 7 cabinets. And so keep in mind also that this little blip right here, that's the off position. So if I turn the amp encoder and or bass encoder to that area, I could bypass either the amp or cab modeling, or both. So if you want to send this to a cab sim, or if you have an amp sim that you want to send through the cabs here in Pod Express, you can do that. And keep in mind, all the cabinets are the exact same IR-based speaker cabinets that were pulled from Helix. If you recall Helix 3.50 or Pod 2.0 firmware, you know, we had these brand new IR-based speaker cabinets. And so the one thing you can't do, yes, you can choose the cab, but you can't change the microphone. Now, the microphone and its placement was actually placed and meticulously, you know, dialed in from our sound design. So the whole idea here is that, you know, maybe this is, you know, maybe someone who's just dipping their toe into modeling, you know, or someone who just needs a simple solution. That's what Pod Express is all about. And so, you know, you don't have to worry about, you know, am I using the right mic? Is the mic at the right distance? And so on and so forth. So all that stuff is already figured out for you. So I'm going to go back to my preset here. I just kind of build on that, but great questions, great questions. So we checked out all the different amps. Let's take a look at the compressors that we have here. So right now, I'm going to turn all effects down, and I'm just going to kind of use this, you know, this kind of punchy sound here, because I think it's nice and well-rounded, and anything you know, any effects I add to it, we're going to be able to, you know, really tell what's going on here. So you have your Ampeg opto comp, and you could hear that compression. If we go over to to the LA Studio comp based off the LA2A, this is one of my most favorite compressors. You know, using it in the guitar realm. And you could hear it's very, very compressed. The LA Studio comp, you could run anything through that, vocal, so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have the Line 6, the original deluxe comp. And then we have the limiter here, the Rochester comp. This is just a really dirty compressor. I really like it. So that's what we have there for compression. Let's turn that off. Let's take a look at distortions now. So I'm just going to kind of go out of order here. Taking a look at distortions. The boost is the Kinky Boost. So that is actually based off the Exotic EP booster. So it's literally just like a line boost. You're not going to get much color out of it. And this thing works great for guitar and bass. Of course, the Minotaur over here on the overdrive circuit. As you can see, not much of a bass player, but we're getting the idea, right? And then we have the 0 amp bass DI for the distortion. Ooh, gosh, that one's cooking. So I could turn this one down just a bit. Let's see what we got there. And as you can see, you can really dial these in. That's one thing that really stuck out to me. The first time I got my hands on a Pod Express, is that you could just see how that LED, how it goes from, you know, soft to kind of hard. And so you can really dial these effects in. So what's happening here is I'm selecting an effect and then I'm adjusting its intensity. And so as I adjust its intensity, parameters that just make that effect just more in your face, whether it's mix, you know, more gain, more mix, you know, it's just kind of the best of all the worlds when we're cranking up in these swooshes here, if you will. And then finally we have our fuzz, which is that bighorn fuzz, very classic. I probably cranked it up a little too loud, so let me just kind of get a little bit of girth from it. So if you're looking for that kind of noisy sound, I know Constantine in the chats here was talking about a Muse type of a setting. We could probably do anything from like from the overdrive distortion or the fuzzes. We can kind of get that. So that's probably on our way to kind of a musy kind of tone. So we're kind of, you know, getting on our way to a heavier sound. Let's take a look at the chats here. A couple things are coming in. Into a tiny box. Can you explain how the DI boxes and models are working like EQ pedal, distortion pedal? So let's see here. Thank you, Constantine, for your kind words. Appreciate having you in the chat today. Let's see here. Can you explain how these DI boxes and models are working like an EQ pedal, distortion pedal? I'm just a guitar player. Of course. So I think the best way to kind of get an idea on how these are all working together is taking a look at the signal flow. So when we look at, here, let me take this out of the equation. So when we're looking at a distortion or a mod or the synth, whatever these effects or, whatever amp, just think of where the block is in the signal chain. So if I look here at one of the distortions, and so for example, we have that 0 amp bass DI for the distortions. So that is processing at the distortion block. So if you think, well, if I have a DI in front of an amp, maybe that just doesn't, sound right. Well, that's kind of the beauty here with the Pod Express, is that you could use that 0 amp bass as a DI, or as, color and extra, gain in front of an amp. So at any time, I could just roll the amp modeling and turn it off. And taking a look at the cab modeling is turned off as well. And then I can just have just effects now. And so now I'm going to go to that distortion. Now let's listen to that DI. And I could kind of crank it up a bit. So what you can see there is that distortion, or that 0 amp bass DI, sounds a bit better now. As soon as I turn an amp on, it's kind of too much. So again, here's that 0 amp bass DI in the the distortion setting. So that's cranked up all the way. Now let's hear what happens when I crank up pull up our punchy amp model. So you kind of get what you would expect. It just sounds like a bit much. And so it sounded better when I, turned off the amp and cab modeling, because like you'd notice, it's a DI. So you have that control over your Pod, when it comes to Pod Express. You could turn that amp modeling off and use just the DIs as DIs. And so we have a DI here in the distortion category. And then we have another, like DI or kind of that pedal idea there in the modern, the modern category there. So, yep, that's what we have there. That's how you can use them, kind of thinking in the mind of a guitar player. So, great question, Constantine. Really dig it. Thank you much. Let's see here. Guitars and Cats. I love the name and and the picture. That's so cool. I'm hearing some good punk rock tones in the boost and overdrive settings. Oh, totally. Whichever side of the fence you're on, whatever kind of music you're doing, anything from jazz to the most gritty punk rock, I think you can get away with any of it with the Pod Express bass for sure. Let's see here. Great question. Have you tested to power it with only your laptop or MacBook via USB without any batteries or power plug on? Yes, of course. And so with Pod Express, it can be powered via USB. And so that's how I'm connected today. I'm connected to my computer via USB. So when you are connected to a Mac or a PC, it will give you enough juice to power your Pod Express. Now you can, keep in mind Pod Express is ultra portable, so you can connect to your phone or a tablet, one of your smart devices, and you could also record and interface, live stream, whatever on those devices. However, it will not power up when you connect to a smart device. There's just not enough power coming out from an iPhone or an iPad or a Google tablet or whatever that may be. So you will need to use batteries if you're plugging your Pod Express into a smart device or mobile device. I mean, when you plug into a laptop or computer or PC, Mac, whatever that is, you have the power through USB bus power. So yes, you are good. Let's take a look here. Constantine, amazing. Thanks. Well, thank you. Much appreciated. So we just went through the cab models. Let's take, we went through the distortion models. Let's take a look at the synths. So I'm going to turn our distortion off now. And so we just have the punchy amp model. I could even crank up the gain just a hair here. Let's look at the channel volume. Make sure we're doing good here. I think we're turned up all the way. My levels, I see I'm kind of pushing them here, so I don't want to clip for you guys. Let's see how we're looking. All right, I think that's good. Of course, feel free to let me know if levels are, too loud, too quiet. All right, let's see what we got here. Let me move that. So for the octave, we have the Octaver. So if you could think of what that's modeled after, you'll win a prize. Gonna crank that up a bit. That's a really, really heavy sound right there. So we have our Octaver right there, and then the growl, which is a line 6 original. That's a fun little, kind of a solo kind of bass thing. Then string, we have the synth string. Let's see that. Let's hear how that sounds. Excuse me. Very interesting. So very cool sound there. Then mutant. So these are for bass players can make these synths sound so good. Myself, please do not judge how these models are based off of my playing. I'm sure many of you bass players out there could do a heck of a lot better job at making these sound fantastic. I sound like a guitar player playing bass because that's exactly what I am. Let's see how the mutant here sounds for the mutant filter. So kind of a, not much of a huge difference here with in regards to tone. Very subtle. Not sure how much you're hearing it over the stream. Let's see here. It looks like we have some more questions coming in or more comments. So let's see here. Heard during the Pod Express Guitar Live Stream there was no app yet, but one of the YouTubers I saw shortly after said there would be an app at a later date. Can you confirm if you heard that? I could confirm that if you heard that from a non-Line 6 employee, I would not. Pretty much, I wouldn't trust anything you hear from someone who's not a Line 6 employee like myself. And so what I can tell you is that there is no app. Is there plans for one to come? Anything like that? Unfortunately, I have no information on it. There's nothing I have to share, but definitely if you hear something from a non-Line 6 or Yamaha Guitar Group employee, I would, take it with caution, let's say. But no, definitely the YouTubers don't know anything that we don't, so that is that. So let's see here. Quest in Reality, great name. Can you please demo how to set up an external dual foot switch? Of course, will do. Let's see here. String have long tag. Let's see. I will show the connections for the external foot switches. Let me see what's going on here. Can be found. So yes, if you're reading that from if you're reading that in the user manual, It very well could be there as a way to, you know, not make any promises, if you will, because not every single computer, you know, may support it. Because with my testing here and how I've used this, I don't need batteries to run it on USB. Now, I'm also plugged into a powered USB hub. You know, we also, you know, the manual, and, you know, we also recommend, you know, don't update, don't record, don't use USB hubs. But, you know, here I am using a USB hub and everything's great. So it's always, you know, it's better to be cautionary than to be sorry, I would say. So unofficially, officially, I guess that's what, you know, Line 6 is saying. However, with my usage and testing here, it does get powered. It is being powered over USB. You know, so just keep that in mind. Like I said, it will not be powered by a mobile device's USB power, but by a laptop with a powered USB that's plugged in, you know, to power, it does get powered. So keep that in mind. So yes, it will be powered via USB. So great question there. So yeah, totally. So that is definitely an option. There's, you know, they definitely put it in there for a reason, and I think that's just to be, you know, where it could be one of those things where it's like, yes, it works for mine, but maybe it doesn't work for, you know, little Johnny down the street or something. And so it's like, well, you said it works and it doesn't, you know, so there's something wrong here. So it's better to just be cautionary and say it doesn't. But hey, it does, and you're looking at the proof currently. So let's see here. Can we demo? I wanted to circle back to here. Can we demo the external foot switches? Of course. And so I actually was ready for this question because I know it came up a couple times last week. So currently, I'm plugged in via TRS into the volume jack. And so in the volume jack here, you can plug in an expression pedal. You can plug in a single foot switch. You can plug in a dual foot switch or 2 foot switches, regardless, or one of each, a single foot switch and an expression pedal. So what I have connected now is my TRS cable going into this dual foot switch. And if you're curious what dual foot switch this is the Mission TT2, although most of any other external foot switches will work. So if you're curious on how to set this up, it's very simple, very easy. But you need to reference the owner's manual because you got to know what's going on here. And the way to know that is by checking out the global settings table. So here we are at the global settings table. Let me blow this up. I'm not sure if this is hard to read. I'm sure it is. So let's just make this full screen. So pretty much the whole idea behind setting up a dual foot switch is I could either use the foot switches to toggle up or down the list here, or I could assign specific effect categories to each foot switch. Now, to tell Pod Express to do that, I need to go into the global settings table and find out exactly which global setting. So this is how this works. So when you press the Alt and the Alt button and the amp encoder, what's happening is you're entering global settings. So now I'm in global settings. So the colors of each ring segment, so I have white and then red. That's actually telling you what is set for that global setting. So if we look at the amp encoder and we think of each LED ring segment as number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. If we look at the table here, taking a look at the position on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. This is the global setting. So let's say I'm on Pod Express bass, and I want to reassign foot switch 3. So here's Pod Express bass, foot switch 3. These colors that we see are corresponding to the LED ring segment that we have. So if I want to change the assignment to foot switch 3, I would select number 6 on the amp encoder. So if you think this being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, its color is white. So when we look at white, we see that it's currently set for previous preset. And that little check mark means that's the default setting. But let's say I want to turn my distortion on and off. Well, to turn the distortion on and off, that's going to have to be orange. So taking a look overhead here, I'm going to push the amp encoder until that LED turns orange. And now it's orange. So now I'll press any foot switch to get out of global settings. And let's say I assign, let's say this overdrive. Now I could turn that overdrive on and off. Here, let's get something that's really noticeable. Let's do this distortion. So if I turn it off, so that's really how you set up an external foot switch. Taking a look at the screen, at my screen here, I can do all effects on and off. I can do individual effect categories, and that's for foot switch 3 and for foot switch 4. You'll notice here in the global settings table, I'm looking at the global settings table for both guitar and bass. But this shows you everything you can assign to the foot switch 3 or foot switch 4. And there you have it, a compact, powerful mini rig. You can also, real quick, taking a look at the tap and on assign. So the on assign, you could actually assign individual effects or all effects to those foot switches. So when you think about it, this is that, diving in that deep, that's a power user kind of, ability, right? Or power user option here. So if you think about it, Pod Express bass or guitar can be a powerful little rig, and this is something that I saw a YouTube video where someone made it almost looked like the lid to a Tupperware or something, where it was like their new rig, and this was literally their setup. And honestly, I can't imagine, unless you're like The Edge and you need every effect under the sun. I don't see how anyone couldn't pull off any gig, recording session, rehearsal session using this setup that we have here. So very cool stuff. So I hope that answered your question there. Quest in reality on how to set up external foot switches, and I hope you saw that demo. And yeah, it's very easy. You just reference that global settings table, and as we saw, very quick and easy to set up. Let's move down the line here. Yes, right. It's quite funny. 3 AA batteries, so 4.5 volts can power the device, but it can't be powered by a USB hub. And right, I think it's very standard for a powered USB hub or powerful peripherals on a laptop. I think can do 5 volts easily. Of course, it's all about milliamps and such, but yes, Pod Express was designed to run off of 3 AA batteries, so it definitely will accept more than enough power coming from a USB hub. Let's see here. What is the app used to program it? Thankfully, Pod Express is extremely easy to use, so there is no app. Will there be one in the future? I have no info on it. That is the official statement. So if someone else says there is something coming and they don't work for us, then I'm sure you can, sure you can understand that that's not the case. Anyhow, Pod Express, super easy to use. You just select the effect, adjust its intensity, and that's it. There's no moving blocks around the signal chain or anything of that nature. The USB out is used for any future firmware updates, and especially to use Pod Express as a 4-in, 4-out audio interface. So keep that in mind. Whether you have the bass or the guitar Pod Express, you just USB into any computer, and now you have a complete 24-bit 48K 4-in, 4-out audio interface. I could literally use this to jam along with music on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or run it into my Pro Tools or my Logic with headphones or studio monitors plugged into it, and now I have, you know, a ultra portable recording studio, if you will. So that's the whole story with Pod Express, you know, in a nutshell, right? So yes, or actually no, there is no app, just because it's so easy to dial in. Of course, who knows what the future holds? I can't speak for the future, but as of now, there isn't one, and there isn't going to be one. But who knows what the future holds, right? So let's see here. So I think, so yes, this was brought up earlier as well, by Guitars and Cats. So if some YouTubers said it was coming out, I don't know where they got that info, but if they're a YouTuber and not a Line 6 employee, then I would say that they are wrong. There is no app, and if there's one in the future coming out, that wouldn't have been made public or talked about. So that's what we have there. So can't use, let's see here, can't use mod effects if looper is active, or is there a workaround? So no, if you're doing the loop, you cannot, you know, once you're in the loop, you're in that loop. And so even if I was to record something, if I'm recording something now, the distortion, comp, and synth effects are active, and then now it's playing. As soon as you get out of the loop, the loop stops playing. So it's not like you can record a loop and then go back to the phase and stuff like that. If you're looking to, you know, have multiple effects and looper, and, you know, if you have more of these needs that Pod Express can't fulfill, then maybe you're a Pod Go customer. Maybe you're a HX Stomp customer. You know, Pod Express, the whole idea is that maybe it's your first modeler, maybe it's a perfect modeler to do, you know, fly gigs or you need a last minute backup. Other than that, you know, really think of someone who's just dipping their toe into modeling, how something like Pod Express guitar or bass can be for them. So that's why we don't have these complex abilities of having multiple effects and multiple amps and looping and all that happening at the same time. So that's why it's kind of laid out the way it is. But to answer your question, if you're using the looper, that's all you're going to get from the mod delay knob, or on Pod Express guitar, the delay knob. Once the looper is selected, you have given up all the effects on that knob for just that looper. And that looper is a 30-second looper where you can do overdub and so on and so forth. So very powerful little unit, right? So let's look at the questions and comments here. This is a rad little unit. Let's see here. I think this will be my first modeler. Usually don't like too many bells and whistle menus, so this looks perfect. And so there you go. You know, that I would say is would be our first listed customer. You know, if we were to list, you know, who the customer is in a group of, you know, from 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, I would say number 1 would be, you know, this user right here. Someone who doesn't need, maybe you are just now getting into modeling. Maybe you just started playing guitar. Whatever that may be. It's perfect just due to its layout and ease of use. And then someone like me who's been playing guitar for a very long time, and you wouldn't know it by my playing, but for someone who's been playing for a very long time, and I have, you know, vintage Marshalls and helixes and pedals and everything, you know, I'm jazzed about this, and it sounds so darn good, and it's so easy to use. I haven't used my Helix or anything else just because I can plug into this. I could go downstairs, plug into this with headphones on, while my kid is, watching TV or something, right? I could just take it anywhere. You could be in the car traveling, cross country, and as long as you have headphones, a bass or a guitar and a cable, you're good to go. So perfect here. So that's pretty much Pod Express in a nutshell. I don't think we covered the mod delay knob too much, but I'll just throw this on the screen just for time's sake and so on. This is what we have. Let me move this out the way so we could take a look. This is what we have on the modulation side. So a plastic chorus, a gray flanger, script mod phase. So, you know, if you think of the classic MXR gray flanger, or that, you know, or the classic script logo phase 90, that's what you're going to find there. So if you're really curious on, you know, who all of these are modeled after, take a look at the Pod Express user manual, the Helix user manual, whichever, because they all share the same exact models. If you're really, really curious exactly, you know, well, what is a G Cougar 800? What is a Tweed Blues Bright? You know, we can't display who we're modeling, you know, here live because of copyright, but you can go into our user manual, and that's where we list that stuff. So if you really want to know what you're using, check that out. And, you know, because if you're a bass player who uses Ampeg and you want an Ampeg bass amp, well, hey, there we go. Well, since we own Ampeg, we could use the name. You know, for the Tweed Blues, G Cougar, and Agua Sledge, you know, we don't. So we have to be a little, you know, facetious with our naming here. So without further ado, guys, I think that is it. Definitely, if you have any more questions, let us know in the chat. This live stream will live on YouTube and Facebook as they are automatically recorded. But before I let you go, we have this really cool thing called Line 6 Lessons, Line 6 Virtual Lessons. So if you wanted to learn more about your Pod Express, Helix, or any other current Line 6 product, go to line6.com/events and sign up for a Line 6 virtual lesson. It's completely free. And for about 45 minutes, you can pick my brain, you know, or pick any of our product specialists' brain. And, you know, we'll get you going. We've had many attendees over the past couple of years, and they always, you know, end very happily. So other than that, let's take a quick look at the chat here since I am on my way out. Want to make sure everyone's questions are answered. Great unit. Is there a way to adjust effects volume versus... So let's see here. Whoops, sorry. Let's look here. Is there a way to adjust the Pod Express effects volume versus the external sound via USB interface? From forums, people say background music drowns the guitar sound from Pod Express. So I would say, you know, it's a happy medium, trying to find that mix. Of course, you know, when you're, you know, if you're listening to music through headphones and stuff, you know, the music can definitely drown out anything else just due to, you know, you're listening to a full, you know, orchestrated, mastered, and production. And so if you're sending a, you know, a guitar signal or a bass signal, it could be hard. It, you know, very well could be hard to hear, especially in headphones. So what I would recommend, you know, keep in mind to control effects volume, the lower your effect is set, the lesser the volume and its intensity will be. Keep in mind as well the channel volume. So if I push Alt and adjust the channel volume with the amp encoder, that's going to give you a louder channel volume, which can kind of, you know, be heard over and, you know, trump the volume of that track that you're jamming with. I think it's just finding a happy medium. You know, some people may be experiencing that. I personally, you know, I feel that it's just like with anything else I've used, Podgo, Helix, really anything. There really isn't anything much different happening on, you know, here with Pod Express compared to, you know, let's say Helix. And so I think that may be a case-by-case basis in regards to hearing your Pod Express with music. It's just finding that happy medium of both. And so I think what happens is you're jamming with music and you want to be a little louder, and then you can't really hear what's happening in the music, and so it's just you're constantly turning one up as your ears are getting comfortable with it. So that's one, you know, one method. Hopefully that helps. Let's see here. I have an 18-watt Marshall style tube amp, and I want the guitar version too. Yeah, so as you can see, and heck, you know, you could even turn the amp modeling off with your Pod Express guitar or bass. You know, I'm assuming, you know, you're using you know, thinking about the Pod Express guitar. You could use this plugged in through your amp. You could turn amp modeling off and use just effects if you'd like. You know, and if you want to practice or record, you know, you could just use your Pod Express. Great stuff. Let's see here. Great question. When using the looper, can the tempo of the recorded loop be adjusted? So no, it can't. The loop is not assigned, or the loop isn't following a tempo grid with the tap tempo. The tap tempo will only set time-based effects, so your modulations, your delays, and you know, and if any of the synthy stuff, you know, were to have any rates or, you know, anything timing, right? That's going to be adjusted by, you know, your tap tempo. But no, the loop is not assigned to a grid, so changing the tempo will not change your loop's tempo. So no on that. Great question though. Haven't been asked that yet. Thank you for the demo, and the lesson events is a nice touch. Thank you, Guitars and Cats, for joining today. Love the name and the avatar you got going on there. Again, you know, I will make sure to leave that lessons link up for a couple seconds when I sign off. That way, if you want to sign up for a lesson yourself for any current Line 6 product, you know, be happy to oblige. And it's free. Where can you get free lessons anywhere nowadays? And you know, one-on-one. Taking a look here, let's see here. Great question. Is there a way I can use my custom IR for the cab? So, great question. Now with the Line 6 Pod Express, whether the guitar or the bass, you cannot change the amps, you cannot change the cabs. But if you do want to use that IR, I'm assuming, you know, you have IR, you know, an IR sim somewhere. Maybe you're using a Line 6 product or someone else's to process that IR. What you can do is turn off cab modeling. So whether I'm using the, you know, again, like I said earlier, whether you're using Pod Express bass or Pod Express guitar, you know, they all operate exactly the same. So if I push the Alt and the tap, again, if I just press Alt and move, you know, the comp or the distortion, I'm adjusting amp parameters. If I press tap and Alt, then now I'm adjusting the cabinet. And so what I can do is I can roll to 6 o'clock and then turn cab modeling off. So now I have just an amp model. What I can do now, or what you can do now, is send this amp model through your IR simulator and use that IR as your cabinet. So it's a little extra steps, but it can be done. You just can't change the amps or the cabs that are already in Pod Express. If that's something you're interested in and something that, you know, you need to do, then I would look at Pod Go. I would look at, you know, HX Stomp. You know, if we're looking for a, you know, compact solution here. So great question. Any idea when they're gonna roll out in Singapore? So we do have, you know, we do have Yamaha in that area. So I would imagine, like I was saying earlier, if I would double check, you know, the dealer or the vendors you like going to, and see when they have ordered them or when they expect them, because since we announced Pod Express last week, it is currently shipping. So the thing is, though, is that these are all selling out everywhere. So that may be why certain regions who didn't jump on the wagon as soon as other vendors, that may be why some of you in your regions are still waiting on a Pod Express unit. The demand is pretty high currently, and so they're shipping, they're being manufactured. It's just, you know, whoever staked their claim first is is the reason why they're selling out and not showing up in other regions, but hopefully soon. Can't wait to get my hands on a Pod Express. Same here. I hope many of you are excited when you get it, just as much as I was when I first got my hands on a Pod Express. Definitely record some videos. Show us what you're doing with them. I'm sure myself and everyone else would love to see what kind of music and things you are doing with your Pod Express. Let's see here, is there a spillover feature when using the modulate effects from the preset then changing to one another? So that is a great question. Let's demonstrate it. So one thing that I do know, dialing in Pod Express over the past couple months is that when you go from one preset to the next, it immediately loads it. But the question is are there going to be are the effects like delay going to spill over? So let's play around with that. So here I have my punch. So there's punch and here's modern. So I'm just going to hit one note open, and you'll notice as I change presets, there's no dropout at all. They're practically instantaneous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that amp model, and then let's turn on some delay. Kind of nice little delay tone. All right, so there's our bass tone. Let's save this. So I'm just going to press and hold. That's where I want it. I'll press again. And now that is saved. So this preset, modern, no delay. Let's go to our punch. So this is where our delay is now. All right, I'm just going to hit some notes and see if we get some spillover when we go into the next preset. So no, there is no spillover. And is that something we can adjust in global settings? No. USB trim, just double checking here, making sure I didn't miss anything. So to answer your question, and that is a great question in regards to spillover, no, there is no spillover. And we just demonstrated that now. And so, and the reason why, it's probably more of an affordability thing. You know, the more you're going to load into something like this, the more complex and the more expensive it's going to be. And so we don't have spillover with Pod Express, but like I said, if something like that is important to you, I would turn you towards a Pod Go, or even a HX Stomp. Great question there. So let's see here. Great question. The synth effect knob, is that a dry, wet mix knob? I assume I can't modify actual synth parameters like the wave type LFO. Of course. So great question. And yes, your assumption is 100% correct. The only thing you're getting, with any of the effect knobs, in the synth knob speaking, this isn't, yes, it does act like a mix knob. The more you turn an effect up, here, let's select that preset. The more you turn up an effect, the more its intensity, and mix is increasing. So if you need less mix and stuff like that, then yes, you would turn that down. But no, you can't change the wave shape or anything of that nature. The only parameter you could really adjust with time-based effects is the tempo, and all the tempos all seem to be kind of fixed, at about a quarter note, I would say. So that's really the only thing you're going to be changing there. But yeah, it's kind of a combination of mix and intensity. Different effects. When I say intensity, for gain, it could be the level and the distortion. For a delay, it could be the mix and the feedback, stuff like that. And that's what you're going to get when you go from one swoosh to the next, if you will. Great questions. So let's see here. For the octave effect, will there be a range knob type effect like the OC3 that affects only lower strings? So, pretty much, currently with the setup that we have now, or, with the firmware that is running now, you do not have the ability to switch that stuff around. Now, if there was an editor or something like that, maybe, you could change that stuff. But no, again, the whole idea behind Pod Express is just this ease of use. Not giving everything in the kitchen sink, even though I know that's a pretty simple request. But for someone who's just dipping their toe into modeling, that may be a bit more, a bit farther than they want to go. So again, that's more of a Pod Go HX, HX Stomp kind of a customer. request or power user type of usability there. So no on that. So let's see here. Why didn't they make the enclosure in metal instead of plastic? Great question, John. And the whole the best answer to that, I would say, is portability and affordability. So if we were to make this out of a metal or aluminum chassis, I'm sure its price would be a lot more than it is now. Currently in the U.S., U.S. pricing is $179.99. If it was made out of an aluminum chassis or anything like that, it would be more expensive. But really, the big takeaway on why it was made out of plastic is also for the kind of customer as well. So ultra portable, ultra affordable, perfect for your first modeler, or maybe as a backup to a gig and stuff like that. So the whole idea is that we didn't design this thinking, hey, we're going to replace pedals on your pedal board. Hey, we're making something for you to add to your pedal board. You definitely can. Obviously, you can do almost any gig with this thing, but the idea was, the end user being someone who's just, like I said, someone who's just getting acquainted with modeling. Maybe this is their first modeler, or maybe just want another toy and you've been playing guitar for 50 years, right? So that's the long answer there on why it's plastic. And honestly, just like how we are with our cell phones or our laptop or our tablets, when we go, when we travel or go on the road, we take good care of those. We put them in padded cases. So I think, if you just show your Pod Express some TLC, it should be able to last a very, very long time. So great question here. Do I want to use a latching or momentary switch? I would say a latching. So great question there. If I replace the presets, is there a way to reset it to factory settings to get back factory? So yes, of course. So what you would do if you are plugged in using batteries or your power adapter. So pretty much if you're plugged in using batteries, if you unplug, so pretty much I think I'm done playing for the day. I'm going to unplug that guy there, and I have batteries running here. So if you want to do a factory reset and you're running on batteries, you would push both. Here, let me get this going. You would push both the on and the tap foot switches as you are plugging in, and you get that 3 blink, and that lets you know right there that you have done a factory reset. So that's how you do factory reset there. Let me plug this guy back in via USB. Let's see here. And as you see, I'm plugged in USB and it just powered on by me plugging in. For those of us in the chat who have been curious, well, can it be powered via USB? There is your proof right there. So that's how you do a factory reset, and so I needed to do one anyway because I was messing around with a bunch of stuff today. Let's take a look down the line here. Thanks for the answer. Thank you, John, for joining today. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Excuse me. Stellar sounds a great platform for beginners. I totally agree. I wish I had something like this when I started playing. 15 years ago. I didn't have anything nowhere near as cool as this, and definitely didn't sound anywhere as good. I can only imagine being 15 years old today and having HX modeling compared to what I had back then. Don't get me wrong, what was back then it was cutting edge technology, but today with the true point-to-point modeling that Line 6 is doing and our sound engineers are doing is just amazing. So let's see here. Great question. Can I copy one preset to another slot easily, or do I have to manually adjust knobs for each preset and save? Great question. So let's say here I want to so this is a good example here. So here I have round. So preset 1, I have the round amp model. Preset 2, I have the grit amp model. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this preset number 1, which has the round model, to grit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell Pod Express that I want to save a preset. And so that blinking is saying this is the current slot we are in to save that preset. Well, if I just go right over to grit and say, well, I want to save that preset to position number 2, and then push again, I get a rapid blink. So right now, round or preset 1 is selected. So with preset 1, or hey, actually 2, got confused there, and the reason why is because I copied preset from preset 1 to preset 2, and you'll notice the amp model is exactly the same. Because obviously that's the the quick takeaway we have here to tell that I copied that preset. And so preset 2 is still round, then preset 3 will be vintage, preset 4 will be punch. And keep in mind we have 21 presets, and so that's 7 presets times 3. So we have 3 pages. So here we are, preset 7, preset 8, and you'll notice that pages change color. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so on and so forth. And then our third page, which is red. And then we go from preset 21 back to 1 on page 1, which is white. And so that was a little bit more info than you asked for, but there it is. So that is how you copy presets. So guys, I would say stick a fork in me. I am done. I think we covered everything there is to cover with Pod Express Bass. I really appreciate all your questions and your comments and your support today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this lessons page up for a bit. So that way, if you are on the fence, if you're looking to dip your toe into Pod Express or anything, whether you are a current or soon-to-be Line 6 customer, it doesn't matter. If you want a lesson on something, hit us up at line6.com/events. Other than that, my name's Nick Bell. I was your product specialist for today. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any more questions, just put them in the chat, and I'll check it a little later, because this live stream is going to live on the website and on YouTube and Facebook. So I'll leave this up here for you. Thank you guys so much again, and until next time, we will see you at the next stream. Take care.